Welcome back to the Gruber Companies. This is the Tesla Roadster version of our podcast. I'm Pete Gruber.
I'm Mark Schaffner. Good morning.
And what we have behind us here today is a artificial intelligence rendition of a Tesla Roadster. And, it's getting better. I keep looking at it. There's a wing on the back, though, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, it is kind of cool. It is. Adobe has come out with their own AI program.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, maybe they're like Midjourney. They'll put out these beautiful pictures and stuff. And so I said, give me a Tesla Roadster in the mountains.
Mm-hmm.
And there is this, it was weird. It was weird. There was a person standing from the trunk up where the hood is, and then the rest of it was a car. It wasn't a Roadster.
Wow. Okay.
It
was like a
mess.
cyborg, part human, part car.
Yeah, it was a mess.
I love what it creates, though. I mean, it's creative. It hallucinates, all those things. But if I was a car designer, all these variations and little things it throws in there actually are inspirational.
Yeah.
It would seem, But anyway, that's the reason for that image. And what I asked for this morning was give me a 2008 red Tesla Roadster at a Chinese loading dock with some sea containers. And that's what it conjured up. And the reason that we asked for that was today is a special podcast. We have the 3 Chinese Roadsters here, the orphans as we call them, or the barn find Roadsters. And we're going to show you a lot of pictures of what we're finding so far as we begin to reverse engineer and analyze these cars. We've only taken one out so far, which is the Radiant Red. The 2 very orange Roadsters are still in their sea containers. And as soon as we get the Radiant Red up on the lift and we look at the undercarriage, its condition, and dig into that car further, then we're going to start working on the other cars as well. It looks like we've got a number of people chiming in so far. Might as well take care of those.
First, George from the Watch Rich Rebuilds channel. We haven't said that in a couple of podcasts.
Yeah.
Good morning, gents, and good morning, George. Glad to have you there. On YouTube, Highlander is back. He says, hey, gang, glad to have you as well, Highlander. Looking forward to getting your guys' comments throughout the show.
Mm-hmm.
On YouTube, Alternative Energy Aotearoa says Kia ora from Aotearoa with a peace sign.
Peace sign, all right.
And so, and Aotearoa, of course, is New Zealand. So glad to have you, and a good early morning to you or late evening.
Mm-hmm. One of our customers, Mike Maloney, was here.
Yes.
His partner is actually in New Zealand right now and has family there. And I was surprised to hear that New Zealand is actually has beautiful beaches and beach houses.
Oh, really?
And a lifestyle that apparently is very much to Dan's liking. Dan, by the way, owns a number of Roadsters. Some of them are here, some of them are there. He just bought one in Australia, actually. He's got a right-hand drive Roadster. I don't know how many of those they made, but
wow,
that's a pretty cool car.
That would be pretty cool. I have not heard whether or not New Zealand has the laid-back Pacific Island vibe. I wouldn't be terribly surprised if it did.
Mm-hmm.
I know that New Zealand is really a pretty country.
Instagram, Juan SoCal1320, he says, "Sup guys, what's the update on the Roadsters that were delivered last week? I delivered the last one." So it looks like one of the transporters. Thanks for joining us, by the way. We're going to get right into that. Got a lot of pictures. We're beginning to dig into the cars. We're starting to reverse engineer, and there's some surprises. Yeah, no doubt about it.
Definitely. George also asks, are the 3 containers on the dock in the background picture the 3 Chinese Roadsters?
They are indeed, yes. And one of the sea containers has already been emptied, and the sellers or the owners of the cars sold that one immediately, and we ended up purchasing the other 2. We'll put them to good use here somewhere.
Oh yes, most definitely will. Again, Alternative Energy Aotearoa says it's 5 a.m. here, so it is early morning in New Zealand. And then George says it's 1 p.m. where he's at, about 69 degrees. And so, George, I'm jealous. Maybe we can send you about 10 degrees so you can be at 79 and then we can be at 90.
Right, absolutely. Jesse, if we're ready to start popping up some of those Roadster images, we can start at the very beginning. So, if you recall, trying to get these cars here has been months worth of effort and
Hmm.
coordination and false starts. And for a while there, we weren't sure who was going to buy these roadsters. And, obviously, if they're buying them in Europe, there's no sense bringing them to the U.S. So
Right.
they stayed in China. At one point, the sellers who have connections in Dubai thought that they would send them to Dubai. And there was a buyer there, actually, that,
Hmm.
that appeared to be serious. In the meantime, we were collecting bids. We got up to $2 million. And after a month or so of investigating, that particular bidder opted out because of insurance issues. The short story is it was a leasing company in Canada, new company, thought that all of this intrigue, notoriety, and fame for these roadsters would help launch their company. And they were fully planning on putting these on the road and into a lease program.
Right.
So you could have actually driven, one of these barn find roadsters if you went to this leasing company, or if it was a successful transaction. It turns out that insurance companies that provide insurance for, at least in Canada, for lease cars, have a cutoff at 10 years. Nothing greater than 10 years is allowed. And the other thing that spooked the insurance companies was the stigma of difficulty getting parts for roadsters.
Sure. And that's a real thing.
It is a real thing, absolutely, especially body parts. So that particular $2 million bidder opted out. And what we're currently doing is we're going to reverse engineer, clean up. We're going to do a complete inventory of the cars. We're going to take ample pictures, a lot more pictures, and then we expect a new round of bidding to take place.
Yes, and one of the first questions and many controversies, as it were, that was unanswered has now been answered.
Mhm.
And that being, what kind of tariffs were these cars going to have? We had heard everything from no tariff whatsoever. In fact, I had believed that since these were used cars and had originated in the United States, that there would be no tariff whatsoever, all the way up to some people saying, no, there's going to be a 50% tariff on these cars. There's no way they'll make their way back into the States.
Mhm.
Where did we end up on the tariff issue?
It was a lot easier than everyone had expected. And the final version was they had transferred the cars from 40-foot sea containers in China at the dock still into these 20-footers.
Mm-hmm.
And the expectation then was that before they were able to be placed on a ship, there would be more investigation, more customs involvement, and all that. As it turned out, after the cars were put into the 20-footers, they took x-rays, were happy, and they were loaded on the ship. It was that seamless.
Was there any tariff at all then to have to deal with customs?
We'd have to talk to the sellers about that, and I was thinking that you might have more information on that.
I think the last that I had heard from the sellers was that they were going to end up having to pay something like a 2% tariff on the cars because they were never titled in the United States.
Mhm.
And so it was as though they were like a new type of vehicle, but I don't know what that 2% was of. If it was 2% of the charges that the buyers incurred to buy the 40-foot shipping containers, or if it was 2% of the value of the cars. But it was at a very, very low tariff, if any tariff at all.
Sure. And, the things that we don't know, and, for valid reasons, it's confidential. We don't know what they paid for them, for example.
Right.
We do know that they accrued about $50,000 worth of storage charges, and that wasn't for the entire 13 years. Someone else was paying that.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, that's about as much information as we have on what got them here. But when they showed up, the first picture, we've got it up there. Okay. So after many months of coordination and some delays caused by processing, even a hurricane. Now, what was the name of that hurricane that delayed things? I forgot.
That's right.
already.
It was, there were actually two hurricanes. Hurricane Dora, I think, is the main one that caused the issue because Hurricane Dora went north from the Hawaiian Islands. That was the one that caused the winds that caused the wildfires that devastated Maui. And that one headed north, but went right through the shipping lanes at about the time that the ship was going to be going from China to the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
The other one was Hurricane Hillary, which was coming up the Pacific coast. And it was actually a little bit later than Hurricane Dora, so it further delayed the shipping by just a little bit.
And the advice to any any ships that were bound for Long Beach was wait until this thing resolves because we may not be able to unload. And if you remember COVID, there were
Yep,
hundreds of ships off the or on the ocean for months
that's
waiting
right.
to unload. So that they finally got here, and the let's go to the next picture here, Jesse. You see the guy on top there. He's actually putting the straps on. What was amazing to me was, and I was under there at one point, you can take 8,000 pounds with no friction and move it fairly easily. Takes a while to get it going, but it was fascinating how easy it was to move these into position. And then we placed all three of them against the west wall of the Gruber Motor Company building. Looks like YouTube, George is chiming in. He says, great show, Mark. Yesterday, you did on your own. You even got dressed up with a shirt and tie.
Yes, I did. And that one was not Roadster related, but it was a little more finance related and talking about the valuation of Tesla stock. And it was asking and answering the question, is Tesla stock overvalued? I'm not going to give any more hints than that for right now. I'd suggest you guys watch the video. Had a lot of fun doing it.
It was a good video and very educational. It's on our YouTube channel, the latest one. YouTube, the official Justin Wong asks, what are your current project you guys are working on? Well, obviously the Chinese Roadsters, all three of those. And over the next couple of weeks, we will be digging through those, documenting, taking inventory. There is a mysterious fourth Roadster that may have been purchased by this Chinese company, this Chinese EV company that went bankrupt. And it's in one of the sea containers, at least the parts that were shipped for that car. What we don't yet know is what happened to the chassis and what happened to the rest of the car.
Yeah, we were looking for the PEM, the battery pack, the chassis, and some of the things. But there's an awful lot of parts in two of the three sea containers. I was surprised that it was in two of them.
Yeah, and more than likely, our suspicion is that in a reverse engineering effort, if they're looking to replicate drivetrain. In 2010, remember, there were no other EVs really that were notable. So a smart thing to do back then would have been to reverse engineer someone else's success, which is what this company did. But the power electronics module, or the three-phase inverter, and the ESS pack, or the main battery pack, would have been where all of the intellectual property would have resided back in 2010. So more than likely, that's what happened, and those parts were removed. But again, why the chassis isn't there is still a mystery. Their fenders, their doors, their wheels, their, some of the rest of the parts are there.
Yes, there's an awful lot of stuff there.
The other projects we're working on, every single day at Gruber Motor Company is working on Tesla Roadsters and some of the out-of-warranty Teslas at times. And it's a variety of things: battery repairs, electronic repairs, PEM rebuilds, and overhauls. And so we're pretty busy with that.
And for myself, among the things that I keep busy working on, we're getting to the end of that third quarter.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to doing some more video analysis of what's going on with Rivian, Lucid, Tesla, the big three automotive makers. As far as the strike goes, there's all kinds of fun stuff coming up for videos. I know I'm probably kind of sick when I call it fun, but it is to me.
So it looks like George was listening when he heard me say a few weeks ago that in preparation for these sea containers coming, my Sunday morning trip to the shop, and I come in Saturdays and Sundays, by the way. I do have a personal life, by the way, and good work-life balance. But I was out there for 2.5 hours in 115-degree temperatures with a blower, getting that parking lot ready for this media event. And what he's saying is, look how clean that parking lot is in the picture. Mr. Pete did a good job cleaning it. Thank you, George.
Yes, he did. Justin Wong has another couple questions for us. He says, curious, how do you guys deal with the long days of work and relieving stress? Do you eat your feelings away, leave work-related stuff at work, and just enjoy time with family? How's your mental health?
Well, if it's directed at me, how do I relieve stress? After 72 years on this planet, I've learned that you really have to you have to be philosophical about things, and you can't let anything get to you too much. Otherwise, your body suffers and your mental health suffers. Honestly, I love what I do. Every day is fun. I look forward to getting up. I have exciting projects to work on. I love the people I work with, and my family. And so yeah, that's how I deal with stress. I just enjoy life.
I'm much the same way. When the stuff that you want to do during your off hours, dovetails right into the stuff that you're getting paid to do when you're working, life is easy.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like you're not really working. And I've got I have some side projects that I do with some of my family, and but I have this here as my main project, and it's fun to do this stuff.
Yeah. I keep.
I'll speak for the social media team.
Okay.
So we it's almost like Justin has a crystal ball. It can see the social media team every single morning eating burritos and different various breakfast items. Yeah, I'd say that's what we look forward to for sure. We
Yes.
do a little breakfast shindig
Yeah.
pretty much every morning.
Yeah, these guys are right outside my office, and every morning it's bacon odors coming through, and fried eggs, and bagels, and yeah. Where do you guys get all this stuff? Is it like food vendors deliver here? No? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, sometimes Jesse will get DoorDash, and other times we'll go grab it. But there's a lot of breakfast places around here.
Are there? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And you have the Roach Coach that shows up every day at 10 o'clock.
Oh,
too.
and there,
Yeah.
if you've never eaten from there, holy cow, they've got good food there.
Yeah, yeah, you can smell them coming too, way down the street. All right, so we got a bunch of comments. Anyway, Jesse, can we get to the next picture? I noticed you had not manned your station there. We've got the next one. There we go. So this is the sea container coming off. Let's see if I can get my mouse here and go to the next image. Let's go to the 3 sea containers have been unloaded, and each Roadster extraction will be carefully documented as they make their way into the Gruber Motors Service Center. Now, let me get the first bit of.
Which image do you want? Because I'm just going alphabetically.
That was image C.
Yeah. Let's go to sea container 3. And it shows our building. It shows where we situated the sea containers. The first thing that we noticed, or that we were aware of, guys, we don't have keys yet for these cars. And that creates somewhat of a problem because yesterday, as they were moving the Roadster, we had dollies on the back because they obviously they got bricked without any human intervention. No one put them in tow mode. When that happens to a Tesla Roadster, the parking pall is locked and the rear wheels are locked. We had not yet put a laptop to it and, tried to get it in tow mode by waking up the VMS. But then they were moving it with dollies in the back, and someone turned the wheel and heard a click. Now we've got wheels that are offset in the front. So we're going to have to put dollies there as well until we get the lock removed, take it to a locksmith, and have keys made for these cars. So that's one of the first issues that we ran into.
So they never found the keys in China then?
No, and it's an interesting story. There is a dock manager that apparently at one point had the keys. They opened up the cars for some reason, some customs thing or something, right? Well, this particular dock manager actually died 3 years ago. And try as they may to find out where he may have tucked those inside the office area there in Guangdong at the dock, they were unable to locate the keys. It would be nice to have those because some things on the Roadster are obsolete. Those little key fobs that are on the end of the manual key, it's a low-tech combination, actually. You get your manual key and then you have a fob. We have not been able to trace the vendor for that. And if any of you in the Roadster community know where the fobs can be replicated, we would love to hear from you.
And that's one where we may even be reaching out to Tesla to see what they can do to help us with that. If I remember right, Tesla did chime in at one point and say there might be a possibility of getting key fobs.
Yeah, that'd be great. If we can get the next image, Jesse. Now we've got one. This is inside the sea container.
So we're going out of order here. I went to C and I already passed that one.
There you go.
There
That's
are
our
two
C.
C's, Jesse, on the pictures. That's our problem in this case.
Yeah. So after cleaning, there was a bunch of styrofoam in the back of this Roadster. They were thick 8-inch pieces of styrofoam 4x4. On the sides were tie downs on all 4 wheels, actually.
Okay.
And they had welded eyelets inside the sea container, so that you had something to tie down to. They also had the equivalent of 3x3s. They don't. I think their lumber sizes are different in China. It wasn't a 2x4 like we would be.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
3x3s that were nailed to the floor in front and behind the tires to keep it from going forward or backward. And then they had these really cool, and I don't have a picture of that, inflatable shipping pillows that were on the sides and on the front of the Roadster, so in case there was any movement. What we did from this point, after we removed all of the tie downs and the pillows and the styrofoam, we then began to pull the cars back until we got them to the edge of the sea container. In our Gruber Motor Company exotic car storage building, there were some beams that they're putting up right now, and they were giant laminated beams, 2x8s by about 2 feet tall. And because they had to trim those, and they were going to throw away what they trimmed, we grabbed a bunch of them, put them on pallets. And usually when I scavenge stuff like that, what we're going to use it for is not readily apparent until the opportunity comes when you need them, and that's exactly what happened in this case.
Sure.
It turned out those 2x8 laminated beam cut off ends were the exact same height as a sea container, so we were now able to pull the car out onto those
okay.
and then get a forklift up underneath it.
Well, you would what you just described is what I love to do, and it is exactly what my wife hates of me.
Really?
She is the opposite of a scavenger.
So she's not a hoarder then?
Oh, not only not a hoarder when we not in the move that we did to our house in Levine, but in one of our past moves, she took in a bunch of our stuff that we regularly use. She put it out and sold it at a yard sale.
Yeah, my wife will do that too.
And I was like, Connie, don't we use that stuff? Oh, we don't use it that often.
Yeah. And if we need it, we'll buy it again, right?
Yeah, exactly. If we need it, if we really need it, we'll buy it again. I'm like, oh, man.
So let's move along to the next image. Now, this is the car coming into the service center. And we began to get an idea. It's actually E1. There we go. Well, you had it up there, Jesse. That. Okay.
Yeah, these are not in order.
After we knocked off some of the dust and there was some spots and, they were inside sea containers, mind you, now for 13 years in a pitch dark environment. And but the sea containers were fairly well sealed. So we got the dust off and we looked at that paint, and it is just brand new. It's no swirl marks. The gloss is there.
Sure.
It looks like it had gone through a paint correction. And that's the rear deck. Now, the rear deck, since we didn't have keys, our mechanics are very good, by the way, at getting into those rear decks on a Roadster, even without keys or without the 12-volt support where the solenoid clicks and releases the hood latches. And we should probably do a newsletter on that to show our Roadster customers how to do that. There, you need a couple of stiff pieces of wire, and on one of them, on the right, I think you push, on the left, you pull with a flashlight through the little gap, put some tape there so you don't scratch your paint, and you can actually release the hood latches from the inside, basically. Let's cover some of these questions because they're starting to mount. YouTube, Lightning Rod. Is today the day? Hello from Thunder Bay. It is. Today is the day that we start to provide some data about how these Chinese Roadsters are beginning to look in our service center. George is saying, where's the key fob with the cars? Oh, were there? No, there were not. And that was part of the problem. They were lost somewhere.
Yes.
Kindness is always free from Highlander, and zero hug inflation. All right. Highlander also says, I love the Roach Coach. They're fun until you get food poisoning. And then it's a sobering experience, and it happens occasionally.
Occasionally it does. They, you got to be. If you taste the sour fruit, then you just put the sour fruit away.
Yeah, right. All right. So YouTube, one more lightning rod. All you fob lovers, listen up. Exactly.
Yes,
all right.
please.
So Pete, George also had another comment. He has not been introduced to Cass, so I figure for all of the viewers who were not present when Cass had her first show the other day, I figured she should introduce herself.
Absolutely.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm Cass. I'm the newest member. I do a lot of their video editing. I'm doing lots of long form stuff right now. I did post well, I didn't post it. He posted it. But I made the teaser for the Roadster that was coming out of the shipping container.
Okay. Yep. Thank you, Cass. And by the way, there was a video. So the guys clustered around me yesterday, and they're usually proud when they get a short form video or something, and we look at it and make some recommendations about additional B-roll perhaps, or what we want to edit.
Right.
And so anyway, this is one of Cass's. So I'm looking at it, and I'm going, wow. This is substantially different than most of the stuff that we've ever done. There was a bit of rap music in there. There was some quick cuts between scenes. And I think she was surprised when I said, let's run with it. We need to shake this up. We need to experiment. We need to try new things. We need to hit a different demographic. Do you know that the majority of our demographic is about my age, maybe a little bit older than you?
Yeah.
And we need to get that young crowd in. In fact, we had somebody on TikTok yesterday, and she said something like, why don't you guys make this show more interesting? It's a bit boring.
Yes.
Make it more fun, they said.
Yes, make it more fun.
More fun, yeah.
So this morning I threw out some ideas to these guys, and it was no. I said, how about if I stand up and dance, do some dancing? I don't want to do the scantily clad thing because that would turn our audience off, I think.
Yes,
right?
it would.
I think I find that really funny that you say that you want to do like some dances, because I do like you guys were saying, you enjoy your work, and so you go home and you still end up enjoying work again. I obviously enjoy my work, and so I was thinking about other different like videos that we could do, and I was thinking about like any of the trendy stuff that's going on, and it's like dancing and like those fast cuts of the bodywork of cars, and I was
Right.
like, I don't know if Pete would ever do a dance, but
I'm game for
Maybe.
anything, and I think that they were surprised yesterday when, again, I said, hey, guys, let's experiment, innovate. That's what this is all about. Let's do things out of the box completely. And so anyway, you have free license. All
To
of
your
you guys.
credit, Pete, you did say, the first thing you said was, I don't get it.
that's
And then
true.
you- and then you're
That's
like-
true. You did say that. I
And then
don't
you're
get it,
like,
but let's run with it.
But I find so many things I don't get are very popular, so I'm okay with that. I understand that. Yeah.
Maybe that's and this applies to me as much as to you. Maybe that's one of the requirements that we have to have, is that the video comes out and we're like, I totally don't get this.
Yeah. Right.
Or we can make plenty of those.
Good point. All right, a few more YouTube. I love yeah, we've gone through
I think
those.
we're all
already.
caught
Okay.
up.
All right, so let's go to that picture inside the service center, and we'll talk a little bit
overall
about that.
pick one?
It is overall,
Yes.
yeah. E.
Yeah,
I tried to put letters in the front of all these images.
The ones that have words after the letter are coming first for some reason. I don't know why.
Oh, okay. Not on my computer. I've got them all lined up.
We have A, B, C one, and then C, and then E1, and then E, and so it gets better, Jesse.
We did miss a quick question from Michael.
Oh, okay. Let's do that. Michael, thank you for joining us. I was hoping that you would chime in here, but let me get your question first, or your comment. The Tag Heuer Roadster that drove around the world got its key lost in India. A new key was made by hand with a file by an Indian locksmith. There you go.
Wow.
Okay. It seems to me that Tesla comes to us for parts at times, right? And I think we've had this discussion about the fobs already. There were a number of small vendors that Tesla selected for the Roadster that didn't quite make it through time. And I actually went to Lotus about this key fob issue. I talked to the plant manager there, who's still there from the Roadster days, Matt Windle, actually.
Okay.
And he said, yeah, I can help you with that. I'll go out on the assembly line. I'll find the key fobs. And I thought, oh, we finally got it solved. And he came back and he said, you know what? After investigating it, that was one item that Tesla decided to take care of themselves, was the key fob for the Roadster. So that was a dead end as well. But anyway, Michael, stay with us here because we're going to have some questions about later on here what's inside this first Roadster that we pulled out that we can't quite explain. Instagram in the meantime, Expedient Auto, we're not seeing the images. That's Instagram.
Yeah, that's Instagram. And I'm going to recommend on Instagram today more than most, please go to YouTube where you can see the images. Instagram is showing a green screen. We simply don't have compatibility yet with Instagram and our streaming software all ironed out.
Yeah, we're getting there, though.
Now, we do have somebody asking on Instagram what our YouTube channel is, and it is Gruber Motor Company.
Exactly.
Thank
Yes.
you, Rich.
And then only George would ask this. He's talking about Cass. He says, now, is she going to grow a beard? And then Lightning Round, he says, give away money. That would attract some people, would it not?
Yes, it would.
So with this VIN 1107, by the way, which is the radiant red that came from China, the orphaned one, except for complete PPF failure, it appears that the adhesive has not bonded with the clear coat. And we'll have some better images for you of this PPF failure here in a moment as we go around the car. In fact, why don't we go to that, Jesse? If you go over to G PPF mirror, we can see what happened to some of the PPF on this car. Now, bear in mind that usually PPF failure has something to do with UV exposure, sunlight. Right? These cars were in the dark for 13 years. So we looked at this and said, how did this PPF get so cloudy, and why did it crack like this? On this mirror is a pretty good example of that small patch of PPF and what it looks like on other portions of the car. Then what we were concerned with, we had a radiant red just like this from Florida about 6 months ago that had PPF that was cloudy like this.
Mm-hmm.
In some of the areas of the car, we were able to remove the PPF by simply heating it up a bit and then carefully extracting it, from the painted surface. And then in other portions, like the front clip, which we think was exposed to more sunlight, the adhesive in the PPF had crystallized and bonded with the clear coat, and there was no way to get it off without removing some of the clear coat. So we ended up having to repaint that car. What we're really hoping here with this VIN 1107 is that we don't have to go to those extremes to put it back to its pristine condition and get some of that failed PPF off the car.
If I would speculate a little bit, here in Phoenix, if you have an outside storage shed, you'll see this. Put something plastic out into the outside storage shed, and that plastic will deteriorate even though it's staying in the storage shed, and it's largely because of the heat and some of the plastic just becomes really old, really brittle. 15-year-old PPF is not today's PPF, even when it was new.
First technology PPF, most likely.
It really is. And so as such, that PPF basically is a plastic covering over your paint. I could totally see this sitting and literally baking in the summertime in these containers over several years worth of time. And it could become, it could lose its moisture, almost like a capacitor loses its, the oil becomes kind of a gel and dries up, and it could end up cracking. That's kind of my working theory of what's going on here.
And I'm not sure that the PPF people or the people that are applying it are forewarning customers that although it looks great and protects your car, you need to remove that after 8 years or so because it's not going to last forever. And but like you mentioned, the early versions of PPF were not as robust and didn't have the same ability to age as the newer versions.
Correct.
All right, so continuing here, we're at the mirror stage now. Let's go to the yellowing portion. And that's the next, mine is H. There we go. What surprised us here was it's not uncommon for Roadster clear PPF like this to begin to yellow as it ages, and our assumption all along had been that it was UV exposure that caused this, including an inferior resin back in the day, and not as UV resistant clear coat on top of it. These cars have been in the dark for 13 years, and we still have some yellowing on the roll bar cover here on the carbon fiber. So that was kind of a surprise. And again, it reinforces the fact that maybe UV doesn't have as much to do with it as age.
Yeah, I'm wondering. And what is the paint material that goes into that clear coat?
Well, you know, I've heard two versions of that, that it's the resin underneath that was poorly selected or inferior, and that it's the clear coat. Now, what we end up doing to resolve this, we remove the clear coat, we remove some of the resin, and this is where the skill comes in. You have to be very careful to not go into the carbon fiber weave, because as soon as you fray that, kind of like your clothes,
Yeah.
you know, it's permanent.
It's done.
Yeah. So that's where the skill is involved in restoring any yellowing carbon fiber. Some of the shops even introduce a bit of black into the clear coat to prevent or to hide some of that yellowing.
Sure, just a drop or two of black would do that. It would make it just a slight gray instead of totally clear, but not really not really detectable. Our wizard, and I mean wizard at this, is Romero, and he is so good at doing that paint work and restoration work like this.
So the other thing that we noticed, of course, was the tires were date coded 2010. That's because that's when these cars were created, and again, these would need to be replaced after 13 years sitting in dry storage like this. The trunk latches, can we go back to image F-rear? There we go. You're probably familiar, those of you that own a Roadster, those trunk latches usually have some black grease on them as they've aged and they've been greased and picked up dirt. These were completely clean. The only thing that we found on those trunk latches was a bit of yellowing in the plastic spacer between the two metal pieces. And again, indicating that this was a brand new car. The PPF, just above the lettering there was a strip placed there, which makes sense because as you're taking things out the trunk, that's an area of the paint that oftentimes gets scratched. That was also cracking. And we'll know a lot more by the next Roadster podcast, next Wednesday, what success we've had resolving this PPF failure. In the front, and I think we've got a shot of that. Well, let's do that later then. The trunk contents, by the way, let's take a look at that.
And that one starts at letter I, it looks like. Yeah, that one.
This was an interesting experiment for us because we had never seen a brand new Roadster. I've never bought one brand new. I know a lot of the Roadster owners did and probably remember some of this, but there were certain things in the trunk, and these boxes were sealed, of course. The largest box in the upper left-hand corner there held the MC240 charge cable. That's the large dryer plug 240 volt.
Okay.
The smaller box there had the adapter that can be used with that charge cable, and they gave them a couple of options, most likely because these were going overseas.
Mm-hmm.
So the dryer plugs, are a little different, or the 240 MC 240 plugs. The book there that you see with the aluminum cover, pristine, brand new, that was also in one of the boxes. And then some of the documentation for the audio system. What was also cool was that hardware kit that you see in the middle there toward the top. Everything was pristine, shiny, tin-plated, never used. And then the front license plate holder, which is next to the toolkit there. And then, of course, the yellow charge cable, which is quite common with the Tesla Roadster.
Yeah, you got to see one that's clean, actually.
Yeah. The next image that we have there in alphabetical order is the delaminating door sills, which is J-sills, guys. What surprised us here, we had assumed that the door sill delamination was the result of getting in and out of the car and hitting it or pushing on it. It turns out that these cars that sat for 13 years, it was an adhesive failure. It had delaminated, and you can see that there's a gap there. Mm-hmm. But no scratches, of course, on the actual, on the aluminum shiny portion. So it looks like age is to blame rather than use for these door sills coming loose.
So it sounds like we're learning a lot about about Roadsters in general just by taking a look at this first one.
We are, yes. The next one, Jesse, is the K-interior. And that's a shot showing the plastic that's on the seats. And the little red S, of course, indicates that it is a sport roadster. Everything in here was absolutely pristine, unscratched. A little bit of dusting needed to be done, but no signs of wear or tear on the seats. There was a dull haze on most of the surfaces, probably from humidity, alternating humidity levels inside.
Sure.
At this dock. Now, here's one that I wanted Michael Aldea to look at if he's still with us. If we can get to the I or L-dash louvers. This one had us puzzled. The two middle louvers on the dash here had this strange leopard pattern. And usually what you see here is a triple louver type arrangement. This was single louver. And these leopard type things are not covers. They're actually part of the louver system. So if you push on the top, it will then present and fold into the middle. Now, two things that we don't understand here is, where did the leopard pattern come from?
Sure.
Was that a special order that this customer decided to invoke? And why aren't there three louvers? Why is there a single louver? And were there other roadsters that had this?
Were there possibly two other roadsters that have this? So we will find out on those.
We'll find out. The very orange.
Was that a custom? Was that something that celebrities did? Did they do custom orders a lot on color and design elements?
Yes, there was some customization possible, and it had to do with carbon fiber, external, internal. But yeah, other than that, we're not aware of any kind of upgrades like this that would deviate. There was one in particular that was up in Montreal, or went up to Montreal, which the customer wanted a number of special things, and Franz von Holzhausen got involved in this one. And it's on our gallery site if you guys want to see it. He wanted burl wood on the inside.
Right.
In various portions, like the waterfall, for example. And he wanted it painted a very special color to match the British racing green in the UK. The old, I can't think of it.
What was it, a Bugatti or something like that he had? Or
no, that was Jim Hull with VIN number 100. This was the, not the Jaguar green. Anyway, it'll come to me. And it's out on our gallery site if you guys want more information. So yeah, customization. There was a short list of things that you could do to customize your Roadster.
Let's get to some more questions real quick before we go into more pictures. We have Lightning Rod that had said give away money, and then George says maybe give away Gruber shirts, and I'm sure he's probably saying hint hint he would like to get one of those Gruber shirts eventually.
I believe this was in response to us wanting to spice up the content.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
Thank you, Rich.
Okay. Instagram.
Faryaz Beck.
Okay.
Says hi. Thumbs up. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
And then Fungi Spores says, I just came in from Instagram. In Instagram, there are zip ties and 2 electric clamps.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yes, you have a couple of electric clamps there, a power supply for one of our laptops, and possibly in the far distance, you have a heatsink.
And we're going to talk about that too. Cool stuff coming up here. Highlander, Allie the Bagpiper, awesome Zoom guest, young demographic.
Yeah, there's a potential. There you go.
Mm-hmm. And it looks like Mike Aldea is going to chime in here. He says, wow, that leopard pattern looks to be corrosion damage, perhaps. I've never seen one like that. Someone here thought that maybe it was bug droppings. But it's actually, those little dots seem to be part of the plastic. What's confusing is that beige color behind it.
Right.
What we'll do is when the other Roadsters come out, we'll take a look to see if those also have that. And the other thing that was confusing for me was all the Roadsters we have in our service center have the tri-louver type arrangement. This is one that has a single.
I was holding my breath when I was filming inside that Roadster, Pete.
Yeah.
Because I thought it was mold.
Oh, you did too? Okay.
Yeah, no, I totally did.
All right, YouTube. George says, yeah, the vents look like that. Ant dirt. Okay.
I'm sure we will find out.
All right, so here was another huge surprise. And this one, let's go to mileage, Jesse. Now, remember, initially, these were presented as 0-mile roadsters. And then as we spoke to Tesla, they said, well, yeah, I think there was some test driving involved with the brand new roadsters before they went to customers. And we could never get anybody. We could never get anybody to tell us how much test driving that was included. Well, we finally got into the VMS on this one, and we haven't finished that yet, by the way. But if you notice, the odometer reading on this particular one is 109.3 miles. So it's going to be interesting to see what the other two roadsters have in terms of mileage, and this may be the first clue how many miles were on brand new roadsters before owners took possession and started driving them themselves.
Well, and I know that this was not the case for all roadsters, and we'll have more information as to why we believe that, or why I believe that, coming up in the future. But I know that there are some roadsters that did not get 109 miles of test driving from Tesla or from somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
So we're thinking maybe this was somebody at the manufacturing company that bought this roadster that maybe took it out for a spin to see what it could do.
Or like in Ferris Bueller, the dock workers decided, oh, cool car, let's go have some fun.
Yeah, they had the keys.
Right.
Pete, is that the lowest we've seen in our shop?
109 miles? Oh, yes. Well, we've got a surprise for everyone. We actually have a Roadster in-house right now that will be coming available for sale shortly that has fewer miles than this, and I don't want to give it away yet.
Yeah. Well, that's where we'll give away more information later.
All right. So another comment, alternative energy,
Aotearoa.
You can say that better than I can. It's the only word that you actually do better with. The other ones, the
It
foreign
took
ones, I
me
usually
weeks of practice to
you're
get
practicing.
that one.
He says there is only one Tesla Roadster in Aotearoa. It's red. There used to be two, but it went to the UK. Well, that red one you're talking about probably is Dan Rubach's car, and he's thoroughly enjoying driving that one. I think he took it to New Zealand, bought it in Australia,
Yeah.
and then took it there.
Yeah.
So the next image here, Jesse, that we want to bring up is M. Rodents. And this was, again, a complete surprise, although thinking about it later on, perhaps not. Now, remember, these cars have been sitting in these sea containers for 13 years in an outside area, storage area, and lots of rodents in China, I would imagine. What we found on both of the door wiring harnesses was this kind of activity. Initially, some people thought, well, maybe it was insects, because there were some insects inside the sea container. But then we looked at the copper wiring here and decided that insects don't have teeth. They're not going to be able to chew into the stranded wire
Yeah.
that is being shown here.
Very true.
So what we're going to have to do here is do some wiring harness repairs and find a sleeve to put on both of the doors. And there's a good close-up there. Just to give some perspective here, this is not an uncommon problem. If you have a cat at home, you probably don't have this issue. But if you're storing your Roadster in your carport or even in your garage at times, there's a certain type of insulation that rodents like, and it's a soy-based insulation is what we're hearing. So this is not uncommon. Sometimes the damage gets into the running board on the driver's side mostly. And the rodents tend to prefer stranded wire like this, but mostly coax wire, which runs, to the camera in the back, for example.
Right.
We just did one here a few months ago where we had to change the entire length of coaxial cable. And I think Jesse is motioning to me as my, do I have a buzz?
No, I was going to say the thing over there on the floor, the spray that prevents the
rodent
mice.
spray. Yes. All right, we have that.
Yes, we have that. And while you get that, and I'll read this next comment that we have. Michael Aldea has commented back, and it's really valuable for people on YouTube. He says the burn-in miles, I think, was about 30 miles early on, but it was raised to about 100 miles due to an increase in infant failures. To catch these failures, the burn-in mileage from the factory ended up being increased. Now, these are later model. These are 2010s, so they were later model version 2.0 Roadsters, so I would think they would have had some of those higher burn-in miles.
Michael, you are invaluable to this podcast. Thank you for
Thank you.
chiming in. Yeah. And you're right. Things like the rivet problem, that wasn't readily apparent when they were building the first generation signature cars.
That's right. That's right.
And that came later. So that would explain then why we have 109 miles on this car.
That would totally explain it. Now, Rich, Rich.
George
had sent us this spray, and it says NH Mouse Out is the name of the spray, and it is a rust and rodent prevention spray. Basically, you spray it into the parts of your car that might be rust or rodent susceptible, and it will help prevent that from ever occurring.
Yeah. I always have to insert this at this point in time because I'm a garage sailor, and I remember one day I was at a garage sale, and I picked up something that looked kind of odd, and I said, "What is this?" They said, "It's tiger urine, granulated." I said, "What would you use that for?" They said, it's a rodent preventer. Apparently, the rodents are smart enough to recognize if a tiger's been in the neighborhood, and they don't want to be anywhere near that house.
Okay.
Probably go for your pets too, your cat and all the rest of the things that are even larger than those rodents,
Yeah, I could even imagine here in Arizona, your coyotes would not be around if they smelled something like that.
Yeah, we have mountain lions here in the state, actually. That would be another
good one.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, so there's a business opportunity. Go out and collect mountain lion urine and sell that as a pest or a rodent preventer.
There you go.
Too, yeah.
Another comment from George. Is it time yet for Rich and his intern, Cass, to do a sunglass case commercial?
I think it's commercial time, yes.
It is now. And so, just so you know, Cass is not an intern. She is a full-fledged part of the team. In this moment, she's in the capacity of the sunglass holder. If you've got sunglasses and you want a sick sunglass holder, we can custom engrave it for you. They are $79.99 on the Gruber Motor Company website. Unless you use code Richard or Aaron, and you get 10% off.
So yes, Cass, like in the legal world, is a name partner.
Well, let's not go that
You've been
far.
watching too much Squad.
Can't go that far. She doesn't have her name on the door yet, though. All right.
Yeah,
You've been watching too much Suits, Pete.
Yeah, you got that right. The reason I watch it is my wife watches it, and before I can go to sleep, I have to sit there and let her finish Suits. But yeah, I am actually learning a lot about the legal profession.
That's how it started with me and Suits. First, it was Claire.
Yeah.
Sitting there watching it, and I was like, "Oh, this is so dumb."
Yeah,
this is
that was
like,
my
look
first
at these people who actually acts like nobody actually behaves in this way.
Right.
And then I started watching, like, what? And suddenly got invested in it, and now I like the show.
And you see all those people in that office. There are always people walking around, and crisscrossing. They never look at the camera. They never say anything. These are all extras, I'm assuming. But the newest one now is Lincoln Lawyer. So if you like those other shows, that's my wife's favorite now too. So I'm starting to get into that one as well.
Well, another thing to look at, anytime they hand somebody a piece of paper, like, how often it happens in that show.
Constantly, yeah.
Watch their eyes.
All right.
They don't move. They just stare at the paper, and then they respond with their line, whatever it is. They miss the whole part where they have to look like they're reading. It's hysterical.
I think they have reignited the business of manila folders because they're constantly handing those to either clients or the other attorneys or, yeah. But you know what? Donna, that is one hell of a personal assistant. I mean, I'm impressed with her. The reason I say that is we've been looking for a PA for myself now for years. And if I had somebody with those kinds of skills, I think we'd hire them on the spot.
Yeah.
Just waiting for your Donna to show up, Pete.
That's it. Yep. All right. We did the burn-in miles. Now, the biggest one, and I want to get to this before we close this podcast. Do you remember the mystique that surrounds, are these cars going to be drivable? Is there any life left in the battery? Is it possible that the cells survived for 13 years? And the prognosis was the only way that we have the sliver of hope that might have happened was if the service plugs were pulled.
That's right.
All right. The next picture. Let's bring that up. It is picture number N-service, and there's the proof. The service plug is plugged into that ESS pack, and so that killed the battery within the first 3 months. All of those bricks would eventually go to 0 volts. There was constant drain on the battery, And we are going to, by the way, look at the battery and confirm that we've got 99 0-volt bricks. But it's unfortunate that the service plugs did not get pulled. Let me explain. If you're going to ship a car and you know it's going to be in a sea container for a couple of months or more, you can do that Roadster a huge favor by pulling that service plug, because what it does is it disconnects any drain, pumps running, VMS remaining active, 12-volt electronics drawing from the battery, and it basically puts that ESS pack into a coma. We've had ESS packs here with the service plug pulled that we go back to a year later, and those bricks are still just fine. It's there. The state of charge retains.
Yes.
So had that been the case back then, that might have given us a shot to see what happens with a 13-year-old pack. None of us really believe that it could survive that long, but it would have been fun.
It would have been fun to at least look. We were talking a little bit about it yesterday. The electrolyte, when it gets down to 0 volts, that electrolyte, basically that lithium turns into more like a plating, and it covers both the cathode and sometimes the anode as well. And so what happens is when you try to apply a charge, the lithium plating is inside the battery what's causing resistance.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just simply doesn't take a charge. It simply resists. And of course, resistance turns into heat, and your battery just heats up and eventually catches fire instead.
So to give you an example of how important it is to pull this service plug, there was a Tesla Roadster in California that was part of an inheritance that went to a family member in Israel. They had it shipped from Palo Alto to the East Coast to get ready to get on an ocean-going carrier.
Mm-hmm.
And Tesla was actually assisting with this at certain times. But unfortunately, this Tesla Roadster went into a sea container in New York, destined for Israel, and they didn't pull the service plug. Well, if it had been a 1-month trip, maybe things would have been fine, but it was during COVID, and there were quarantines in place.
Oh, boy.
And it was 4 months later that this Tesla Roadster arrived in the sea container in Israel, bricked, completely dead.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's important. The service plugs, if you guys need advice, we've got a newsletter on how to do that out on our Gruber Motors site. And feel free to call us for any technical assistance on how to do that. Make sure that you have a skinny teenager with long arms, because some of us can't reach back there. It was put in a very inaccessible place, and as this picture will attest, there is a gas strut in the front there, and probably 1.5 inches of clearance on either side of that, and you have to somehow squeeze in between that to pull out that plug.
Yeah, that's definitely not something I would be doing. Highlander asks, where did the new hockey puck go? Notice you feature items between you two. Well, we're going to get to some of these items, but I think this right here is the hockey puck you were looking at, and it will be talking about later today as well.
We will. In fact, now's that time. Why not?
I think it's a great time.
Okay. So the other thing, Roadster related, that I wanted to show you guys is there's a picture actually, Jesse, that we can bring up that's outside this folder. And it is picture number 1.
All right.
Our chief engineer, Ken, by the way, we have a wonderful engineering team over there at Gruber Motor Company. Mm-hmm. There are a number of skills there, from paint body to mechanical to suspension expertise, and the lab people, a bunch of people that work in that lab that do the electronics. And Ken is one of the, he's the chief engineer there. What he's been working on is researching and analyzing the Tesla Roadster power electronics module power board insulating material. And what this is about is this board that I'm holding in my hand, there are 3 of those that create 3 phases. What it does is they take the DC voltage coming out of the battery, convert it to 3-phase AC, and each of these power boards handles one of the phases. And what Tesla did back in the day, unlike in the critical power world where we have large semiconductors like this thyristor, for example, what Tesla decided to do in their design was use a whole bunch of small semiconductors called IGBT transistors, and I'm holding one in my hand here. This actually mounts on this board, and then there is a metal portion on that transistor that gets heat sinked to get rid of the heat. Now, the heat sink that couples to,
If you want.
and this is a representation of a heat sink that came out of an uninterruptible power system. Remember, we're the guys that for 40 years have been working on critical power, and we find that the Tesla product is virtually identical to what's in those Teslas, and that's what makes us so darn good with the Tesla electronics.
That's right.
So this transistor, IGBT, sits on a heat sink like this, or clamps to a heat sink, and the function that this provides is drawing off the heat and dissipating it. In a Tesla Roadster, the reason you get your annuals is because that heatsink has fins. And in order to properly cool, the fan blows air through these fins, kind of like a radiator, to draw off the heat. Well, this transistor, this IGBT transistor, has 400 volts DC at hundreds of amps on it. And if you put that directly onto the heatsink, you short it out or you ground it out and you blow up stuff. All right? So what they do is they use a dielectric compound or an insulating material. And that goes between the transistor and this heatsink. And what it does is it is able to draw off the heat that is dissipated by this transistor and send that to that heatsink. Now, the problem that occurred with Tesla Roadsters is the original heatsink material that was used by Chroma in Taiwan in 2008, as it aged, began to crumble, dry up, and deteriorate. And that's the first engineering problem that we became aware of when we started working on Tesla Roadsters.
Now that this material, this dielectric material and insulating material, is this similar to like the insulating material that's on PC CPUs today that actually is more effective in drawing heat away than just having a metal-to-metal connection would be?
It is. It's similar to that.
Okay.
Yeah, and they also use thermal paste with some of the CPU chips.
Yes.
Which is, now, the reason thermal paste is tricky with this kind of design is you don't want any conductivity.
Right.
And this has 400 volts running on it. So typically, this type of material is put on dry.
Okay. Okay.
So the original thermal insulating material, and I don't have a sample of it here, but it was thinner. And as it aged, as it crumbles, eventually these transistors with 400 volts on them short to ground, and it blows up your power board or your PEM. And that's probably one of the most common repairs that we end up doing in the Tesla Roadster is a blown PEM. It also is the reason that you want to get your PEM overhauled and upgraded. You have engineering problems. You have deferred maintenance in that power electronic module. And if you have a 2008 Roadster, it's 15 years old. The things that you need to be concerned about is not only the insulating material on your phase boards, but also these black guys right here. These are electrolytic capacitors. They have a shelf life of 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
If they're 15 years, they've already expired. And in the critical power world, where customers are very attuned to uptime, they proactively replace these every 8 years. That's part of what we do when we go out. We change batteries, we change capacitors, or we do remedial maintenance.
Yeah, we'll change the fans out. And unless somebody think that our barn find Roadsters would be in good shape because they've never been driven, actually they would be worse. The capacitors like this are known to dry out even more if they've never had electricity running through them, because the electricity causes the heat and the current flowing through these actually helps to condition them and keep them in good working order for longer than not ever having been used.
So what we're working on currently, our chief engineer is spearheading this project. As you know, Tesla Roadsters don't like heat. And where we live here in Phoenix, Arizona, we're the best test ground or proving ground for that problem.
Yes.
What we noticed all this summer, as the heat waves rolled through the United States, we had Roadsters that were suffering. They would go into power limiting mode as you were driving them because these transistors were getting too hot. So what we're working currently on is identifying a better insulating material that has a better dielectric property, insulating property, and heat transfer. And we have another image. Oh, the image is up. It was up. Let's throw up that image of that gauge. There we go. So what Ken is working on here is he is trying different torque settings on these clamps here, which is what presses this board and these transistors onto the heatsink. And what we're finding so far is that the original material that they used back in 2008 is definitely inferior, which is what we actually knew already because we had upgraded this years ago and started using this in 2014 or so. But what we're finding now is we're going to dial in the best transfer material or insulating material to use on a Tesla Roadster, which we're hoping will make these heat-related problems go away.
That would be amazing. And is part of our desire to do this because of what we heard about the Roadster that went to Dubai, where the summertime temperatures regularly get in the mid 120s and sometimes the low 130s, and that Tesla had made some tweaks specific to that one Roadster to get it to be able to perform in the heat?
Sure. The tweaks that were made to that Dubai Roadster were related to tweaking the bias resistors that would sense. They opened up, in other words, the parameters for how much heat it could tolerate without actually making physical changes to the insulating material. What we're doing is going a step further. We're not going to change the firmware or the hardware or the electronics. We're going to improve the heat transfer capability for those transistors, again, improving the Roadster performance.
Okay, so rather than expanding the green range of what's safe, we're actually solving the underlying problem in making it so that it's not going to get as hot.
Exactly, yes, a better heat transfer. All right, so I thought you guys might enjoy that. We've got the sample heatsink here for you to get a visual of what's going on here.
On YouTube, Alternative Energy Aotearoa says the red Roadster is owned by the first person to have a Model S in Aotearoa. So that means that you're going to need to start checking because there are now going to be at least 2 Roadsters in the New Zealand area. One of our good longtime clients, a gentleman named Dan Rubach, has I don't know if I'd call it a residence, or I guess that's going to be what it is, in New Zealand. And he bought a Roadster right-hand drive from Australia and has transported it to New Zealand so he can drive there as well.
And he's having lots of fun with it there, by the way. I see pictures of him all the time on Facebook.
Yes.
Trucker Alistair is joining us. He says, "Hi there. Long time no chat. Today, greetings from L.A. to all Gruber Motors. Thank you for joining us."
Thanks, Trucker. Glad to have you back.
Highlander saying rats.
Rats.
Yeah, that's right. YouTube, Bernard Homan. Hi from Toluca, Mexico. Welcome. Thanks
Welcome
for joining
back.
us. Yeah. Good question here from Core Glass on YouTube. Do the other later model Teslas have service plugs? Yes, but it is not manual like it is in the Tesla Roadster. In the later Teslas, they use contactors.
Right.
And firmware that senses what the condition of the battery is, and it will open up the connections and take any kind of drain away from that battery.
Sure.
YouTube Highlander, where can I buy it for control panels? Are we talking about the big thyristor that I have here, or the heat sinks? We have, by the way, we refurbish critical power equipment, lighting inverters, uninterruptible power systems, and so we end up buying used equipment and then completely rebuild it. Not all of the equipment we purchase makes it back out in the field, so we do a lot of scrapping here as well, and we render some of this equipment back to parts, especially component UPSs,
Right.
where the boards are out of production now. And we have service agreements where people still want to keep them running. So for those of you interested, we do have high-power electronics like this, and SCRs, IGBT transistors. This little transistor you see here is what Tesla used. Some of the IGBTs we have in UPSs are about 6 inches by 4 inches by about 2 inches deep. They get fairly large. And we keep a lot of that in inventory. So if you're doing any kind of that experimentation, check with us. We have those types of parts typically.
Yes. On YouTube, Core Glass says if you don't have a multimeter, you can lick the terminals to test for voltage.
Yeah, that's the old 9-volt battery trick where you feel the tingle.
You would feel a little bit more than a tingle if you had 400 volts at about 250 amps coming through your tongue.
Yeah. Now, Michael is joining us again. He says, for shipping and safety requirements, battery packs had to ship by sea at 50% state of charge or 30% by air. Now, what I would hope at that point, Michael, is that someone at the dock would, if they need to see 50% SOC state of charge, at that point they would allow whoever is doing the transport or the owner or Tesla to pull that service plug, because now we've shut the battery off completely.
Right. And that way the charge, I would think it would actually be even safer.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because you're not going to have the chance for discharge if that service plug has been pulled. You've literally broken the circuit.
Yeah. But more than likely, being a logistics problem, in other words, the coordination of getting people there that can pull that service plug was a problem. So it could be that their assumption was, well, it's only going to be on the water for 2 to 3 weeks or so, and that's ample time for that Roadster to survive.
Yes. Now, in response to your question or comment about the crystallized tiger urine, Highlander says, I'm not milking a mountain lion. I call BS. He says, Pete likes the show.
Good point.
Yes, very good point.
Core Glass is asking, are there public domain schematics available for the Roadster? No. Tesla has been fairly decent about providing documentation, owner's manuals, even some service bulletins. And over time, they have been releasing that. But what we're finding is that some of this information is just not available anymore. And whether that was, people parking stuff on C drives, no longer with the company, and the C or the hard drives got recycled. Let's remember that Tesla was not always a very large, organized company.
Right. And as is common in companies that go through a tremendous amount of growth very quickly, the organization, it's very difficult to stay organized. When at the same time, you got to be focused first and foremost on getting product done, getting it shipped out, and making money. Because if you spend all your time organizing, then there will be nothing left to organize.
Yeah.
And that's what happens with growing companies.
All right. One other thing that I have for you here is it looks like Tesla is watching our videos. Not that that's a surprise. We've got some pretty cool videos, but we had a vendor contact us. It was Fine Tools, F-E-I-N. And remember, these are the guys that found an application for their medical product, which is a cast remover tool.
Yes.
And remember, when you break a leg, they put a cast on your leg, and then somehow later on they have to saw that off, and you've got tissue underneath that cast that you don't want to damage. So using a saber saw is probably going to rip your leg apart. So what these guys developed was a tool that actually vibrates its way through the cast. And they also saw one of our videos and said, there's an application for that tool. These guys are taking battery packs apart, the Model S battery pack, where you have a large surface area with a lid, and which is glued down to the top of that tub through like a caulking compound. So they actually repurposed this tool to break that seam, came out and visited us. We tried it, and we swear by it, and we did a video with it. And, excuse me, that's what Tesla was viewing. So they contacted the company and said, hey, we like what you did with Gruber. We also do that here. This was Lathrop, California, where they remanufacture battery packs. And it turns out that they were using an air chisel, which is something that we had also attempted to do, but there's a lot of power in that air chisel, and it's pretty difficult to control. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
So, but the good news is they liked our video. The vendor now looks like they're going to be working with them on getting this tool into Tesla. And for those of you that are in the independent repair space, we swear by this tool, FEIN, if you're interested. Fine Tools. And it's a little, it looks like a die grinder with a blade on the end that simply oscillates back and forth. And they have various shapes of blade that will follow the contours of the Tesla Model S or Model X battery tub so that you can remove that lid.
Yeah, and we definitely swear by it. We're very glad that Tesla and Fine Tools were able to find one another on that particular one. YouTube, Michael Aldea has a comment for me, actually. He says, yes, it was called a hot PEM upgrade. This is the Roadster from Dubai.
Okay.
He says he's not sure what they changed.
We do know what they changed, Michael, and the reason is we got one of those Roadsters in our service center a couple of years ago, and it had clearly with a Sharpie mark inside on the internal fan cover instructions that this Roadster had been modified for high temps.
Right.
So what we then ended up doing was reverse engineering to find out what components they changed, what the values are, and we now have that in our knowledge base, should we ever decide to go that route ourselves.
Very cool. George says, so we went from changing glass bulbs in the 70s to changing capacitors in the 2000s.
Yes.
Yeah, pretty much. That's exactly right.
Filter caps have actually always been a problem, though. What they do is they convert or help convert AC to clean DC. And even back in the tube days, you needed filter capacitors because tubes, they ran off DC. The filaments were AC, 6 volt, 12 volt, filaments. That's what lights up the tube. But then the actual transfer of information, they weren't computers, audio or whatever.
Whatever was going through.
That would require B plus voltages or positive voltages. Or DC voltages. And in order to convert AC to DC, you need a rectifier, you need some chokes, and you need some capacitors. A typical symptom that would immediately tell us in a repair shop, and I worked in a radio shop during high school, by the way, so I'm fully aware of this, is if a TV, a radio, a phonograph, a tape recorder came in, and when you turned it on, there was an audible 60-cycle hum coming through the speakers. That indicated that the DC was no longer clean. You had some AC that was entering, and you were hearing 60 hertz.
And that simply means that your caps had aged out and needed to be replaced.
They had dried up, and yes, exactly.
Interesting.
In advanced cases, and we talked about this in our Critical Power podcast last Friday, and this is the importance of changing them. If you let a DC filter capacitor, the large ones, 40 microfarad by 450 volt DC, go to the stage where they are beginning to fail and become resistive. You now have, remember, 400 volts running through a resistor. A resistor is a heating element. It's what your stove is at home. So you run current through a resistor, you get heat. You get enough heat, you get a thermal event. Or the cap blows its top because it's building pressure inside.
Right.
And the last thing you want is an electrolytic capacitor, and we've had this happen in Europe, blowing its top and throwing shrapnel all throughout the inside of your power electronics module because everything in there is conductive now. You've got all this shrapnel, pieces of aluminum foil that are landing on top of chips and your circuit boards, which can cause a whole lot more damage. So, yeah, capacitors, we definitely are proponents of replacing those on a periodic basis.
Yep. Highlander says, I watch at lunch to stay current. So on YouTube, Alternative Energy Aotearoa. It says, cool. So now there are Roadsters in Aotearoa. That's right. There definitely are.
Highlander says, did Pete get my latest package? Not the latest one. We got bagels. And thank you, by the way.
Yes, if it was food, you did not get that package.
Oh, okay. So that's what happened to it.
I think Highlander has sent something else and was in contact with our receptionist recently. I do not know that the package has come yet, Highlander, but I think it's going to be coming soon.
Well, thank you, Highlander. And by the way, Elvis enjoys the conversations with you. He'll be on Friday morning.
Yes.
All right. TikTok, iPhone House. Hello from Mexico. My dear friends, love your podcast. Well, thank you for joining us. Yeah, we're having fun with it.
Yes. Very, very much. And then on YouTube, Highlander again says the rat control spray control. So now that's similar. Maybe that's similar to this. So
So we've got another bulletin for you. Got a notice from Facebook actually, and this is the testcalendar.com folks. They are ready again for a photo contest, and what they would like to get is pictures from the Roadster community for your favorite Roadster picture. And you can email that to, no, I guess there is no email. You can go to the website. It's testcalendar.com. And you can enter it there or on Twitter at testcalendar1 on Twitter. And if you send in your picture, there's a prize involved. They're not saying what it is, and you may just get your picture on their calendar. And I'm not sure what the duration of their calendar is, if it's a year or if it's on a monthly basis.
yeah, I'm not sure, but they do talk about it being they say next week. So I'm thinking the last week of September is when they're doing this, and they're looking specifically for Roadster photos.
And for those of you that have any kind of car shows you'd like to advertise, or events like this, or promos and give-me's, feel free to email us that information, and if it's appropriate, we will air it on our podcast. Apparently, a Tesla Roadster just sold on Bring a Trailer, and this one was one that was being watched by some collectors. This was actually a validation prototype, number 22, VIN number 22. It's electric blue. It wasn't represented the best as it could have been. In other words, it wasn't detailed by a pro before the pictures were taken. But again, it was a widow sale, and in California. And we were all watching this because no one really has a clear-cut guideline yet as to what these rare collectible Roadsters are selling for. As I've said many times, if I want to sell my house, they look at comp value in my neighborhood. What did the last house in my neighborhood sell for? They immediately have a price per square foot, and then they'll probably take bids slightly over that when it gets sold. In the world of rare collectibles like this, there's not a lot of comp value to draw on, not a lot of history. So although there have been some expensive Roadster sales, the most expensive so far has been one that we sold, VIN number 13 with 897 miles. That sold for $295,000. There were some others sprinkled in around the $200,000 range, either low mileage, low VIN, celebrity owned. But this validation prototype was an R80 replacement pack, which is, there are two variations of that. There's the 2016 version and the 2020 version. The 2016 version, some of them are having problems. They're going end of life. And those of you who want to see more about what is going on our YouTube channel, we've got about a 20-minute video or so that describes our findings regarding these end-of-life symptoms on the 2016 R80 battery packs and what you might expect. So the price, the final selling price was $136,000. And with Bring a Trailer, there is a fee to the seller. I'm sorry, to the buyer.
The buyer, yeah.
Yeah, which is added to that. So we're probably in the 140,000 range or so, or plus, for that validation prototype, which for a running car is probably low. VPs like this are very rare. And let's not forget that these are cars that escaped. Technically, the validation and engineering prototypes typically are not sold. They are reserved. They're usually beat up. They aren't. They may not even be considered roadworthy. You know.
Well, I think aren't these some of the ones that after they go through testing and getting beaten up and so on and so forth, they make their way over to the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety for their crash tests as well?
Yes, yeah, and those don't come back.
And those never come back.
But having said all that, the ones that escaped, this is what collectors look for. This car is going to be worth a fortune someday. Anyway, whoever bought it did well. I think it was Green Line. I'm not sure who that is. That's his handle on Bring a Trailer.
I don't know, but congratulations to them. They got a great deal on a car. Had what, about 49,000 miles or so on it.
I don't remember the mileage. Yeah, let's see if I have it here.
It had
Yeah,
been
49. Yep.
Yeah, so it had been driven some. It's been loved and used and seemed to be in pretty good shape.
Okay. We also, by the way, posted, and I don't have them here to show you, but we posted 2 Roadsters on our free Roadster matchmaking site. One, I think, is around $99,000. The other one is going to be repriced from $130 down to $107. So those of you interested in getting Roadsters, we have a lot out there for sale right now. And you can also see what Roadsters are selling for by going to the sold section on our Roadster for sale site on our website. Highlander sent us a box of kindness. It's free, as you know. Well, thank you. All right.
Yes, thank you, George. That's a great guess. Seth Love on YouTube says it would be nice to see an axial style motor on that Roadster make.
It would be. And in fact, we have a customer now that contacted us yesterday and would like us to look into finding a different drivetrain for the Roadster. So that'll be, I think, a fun project.
That definitely will. There are some people that we can partner with on that too that help do EV conversions. And although they've never done an EV to EV conversion,
right,
that should be a lot of fun.
Probably one of the first. So you have something you've been itching to tell us about.
Oh, I have been. We were talking about this a little bit yesterday. I thought this would be a great venue to talk about because the Roadster is known to be a fast car. Okay, I mean, back in 2008 when the Tesla Roadster came out and had this 3.7 second 0 to 60 speed, that was considered lightning fast. I mean, unprecedented would be a good word for that. Now you've got these cars like the Tesla Plaid that'll go out and it'll do 2.5 seconds 0 to 60 time. Well, there's a group of students in Sweden.
And there's a picture here, Jesse. If you can bring up
the Plaid does 1.99 seconds.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this one would leave the Plaid in the dust. A group of students wanted to get the world's fastest 0 to 60 time, or for them, they were saying 0 to 100 kilometer time.
Right.
And you don't need 2,000 horsepower in order to accomplish this. So this little car, pictured right there, is able to make a 0 to 62 miles an hour in 0.953 seconds, so less than 1 second. The car itself, obviously, it's a custom-built car. It was a student project. There was a group of students in Germany that had taken the record from this Swiss group, and this Swiss group said, we're going to see if we can do better. And they did. The prior record from the student level was about 1.5 seconds, and now you have supercars like the Rimac Nevera that'll go at about 1.3 seconds, 0 to 60. This car, at less than a second, it will go from 0 to 60 miles an hour in literally 15 paces. It takes 40 feet for it to get from 0 to 60.
Now, this is where Sandy would say this thing will go like a scalded cat.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it sure will. And so, the driver is a young lady named Katie. She's one of the team. And she talks in a YouTube video about this just a little bit. And she talks about how fun it is to be able to do this. She says it's just like taking off on a little roller coaster. And what they did when they set this up, they're doing it in what appears to be just a small airport behind a few hangars, and they go from 0 to 60 back to 0 in probably like 600 feet.
Amazing.
It's so amazing to see. So we'll continue to talk about this more on future podcasts. I think we may even bring this up tomorrow and delve a little more into it. And that way we may have the chance to play the video and stuff like that. But we're talking about Roadsters. We're talking about fast.
Mm-hmm.
This car. Oh, by the way, guess on how much the car weighs.
1,200 pounds?
How about a quarter of that?
Really?
The car itself is 309 pounds.
It's a short sprint car. That's why you don't need a lot of battery.
Yeah,
If you're
you
going.
don't-
Yeah, because you're only going, 200 feet or something.
Yeah, you don't need a lot of battery. It's a it is, like you said, a short sprint car. The electric motor does produce 348 horsepower, though.
Amazing.
So you've got more than 1 horsepower per pound.
It's crazy. The driver needs to make sure they even eat a light breakfast that morning.
Totally, yeah.
Yes.
There's some serious tech involved in this because even Mickey Thompson slicks could not get that much traction in that short a period of time. Now, when I look at the car, I see all kinds of endorsements. I'll bet you those wheels and tires were exquisitely designed by a company that put a lot of forethought into how do we get that much traction on something like this that's that light.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm sure that the choice of driver, being a petite lady as a student, is absolutely on purpose as well. You don't want to have a big husky guy in the car like that because you don't want to be carrying another 60 or 70 pounds.
Oh, totally. This is like horse racing. Your jockey's got to be 5 foot, weigh 110 pounds. And yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Amazing. So we'll get some more information on this car. This is pretty interesting stuff. The thing that I'm curious about is, are there any statistics that indicate at what point in time you reach blackout, when you're pulling G's like this? Probably the military is very much aware of that because of, fighter jets.
Yeah, the military and fighter jets will say that you can usually pull somewhere between 9 and 10 G's before you black out. What I'm also interested in is how many G's did this young lady pull?
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I haven't found out.
So for those of you that have some spare time and that are interested in becoming an EV hobbyist, here's something that might inspire you and something that you can build.
Yes. Go, if you want more information yourself and don't want to wait for us, go to the Gruber Motors Facebook page. It's the Gruber Morning Show page. And this is one of the articles that we posted recently.
Very cool. Got another image for you there, Jesse. It's Elon. Came across this. This was back in the day. He was caught on one of the California freeways in his Tesla Roadster. And he has 2 of them, VIN 587s in space. And I think I got that VIN right, 564. One of those. All right. Anyway, it's on our website.
Yes.
This is, I think, Founder's number 1, which is a black Roadster that he has been seen driving across the stage at one of the releases, the shareholders meetings. And but anyway, there he is. I'm not sure if you can catch his silhouette, but it does look like Elon in the rearview mirror and at least part of his face there.
And I just noticed something looking at that picture again. One of his taillights, the top center brake light is out.
Oh, okay.
Unless he's actually moving forward with the lights on and not braked.
Yeah, someone did have a comment about the brake lights and what might be going on there, and I don't remember what that was when I grabbed this picture. Very cool. The only other thing I want to leave you with is I've got a couple images there, Jesse. If you could bring in image number 0. 0. Seth Love says he'd love to help with a Roadster conversation or conversion, I think. Thomas West says, thank you, Thomas, for joining us. VIN 686 is in space.
Thank you, Thomas. And for Seth, email your interest to ev@gruber.com, and we'll, that way, that's a good way to get in touch with us.
What I'm showing here is our engineering lab, the one prior to the one that we have now, but they're fundamentally the same, and doing Roadster power electronic module rebuilding in this lab. And you can see there's a lot of equipment here. A friend of mine down the road here, Steve Morovic, runs a Lamborghini Ferrari shop. And I'm always envious because there's some exquisite engineering in those types of cars. And, EV definitely is a direction we need to go, but we can't negate the fact that as the ICE vehicles evolved, the engineering became more and more impressive.
Sure.
The next picture, Jesse, is 00, and every once in a while, my buddy Steve there posts a rebuild that he's doing over in his shop, and he is meticulous. He's kind of like us. It looks like a surgical process with all the tools laid out. When he does an engine rebuild, for example, he lays out all the pistons, all the rings, all of the shafts that go with the pistons, all the bearings. Everything is matched and mated and neatly organized. Well, here he is rebuilding a Lamborghini V12. And as much as I love electric vehicles, I'm telling you, this is equally as much fun. It is a marvel of engineering. It's not your average Ford and Chevy or six-banger, you know?
Yeah, that's a beautiful looking engine, and that Lamborghini across the top.
And of course,
Ooh.
once it's running, the sound that comes out of it is like a symphony orchestra to any gearhead.
Of course, that is in its own way as much a piece of art as anything else.
Right. Highlander, he says, wow, faster than my 69 Roadster, beep, beep. And then faster, twice. All right, you guys are putting it up there twice? No? Okay.
And then Michael Aldea has one more. He says, Founders One is currently at the Peterson Museum in Los Angeles.
That's true. You guys were there. Did you see that black Roadster that said Elon?
Yes, sure did.
Okay.
It was, can confirm it is sitting on a platform.
What do you think that car would sell for if it ever sold? Founders number one, Elon's car. Any price tag come to mind?
I'm going to say $3 million.
$3 million? Okay. Well, that's a good starting point. Yeah.
I would call that a good starting point. I could see it. I could see it depending on who decides that they want to buy it. 10 million or more would not be out of the realm of possibility.
Well, I am getting the wrap-up gestures and signals. Thank you all for joining us. It's been a privilege and an honor. We're going to continue to reverse engineer those Chinese Roadsters. Next thing is up on a lift. We're going to look at the condition of underneath the car, look at the control arms, look at the plumbing. The thing I'm concerned about is on that ESS pack, there's some rubber hoses there. Some cooling hoses. Would those survive, you know?
Yes.
But again, thank you for joining us. Tomorrow we've got our general EV broadcast. Friday it's the GPS broadcast with the other team. And Sunday, Jesse and I come in and we theorize what is going to happen with AI. I think Elon's in front of Congress right now with some other guys talking about that very thing.
I think they are. And all of them start at 10 o'clock Pacific Daylight Time. We will see you tomorrow.
Thank you.